Imagine waking up and discovering that the worst moment of your life wasn't a nightmare, that the blood on your hands was real, that the people you loved most in the world were gone, and you were the one who took them. That was the reality Hercules faced. Son of Zeus and champion of humankind, Hercules was the greatest warrior who had ever lived. He had wrestled giants, outrun armies, and bent the laws of nature with his bare hands. But none of that could protect him from the goddess Hera, Zeus's wife, and the most dangerous enemy Hercules would ever make. Hera despised Hercules simply for existing. He was living proof of her husband's betrayal, a monument to her humiliation. And so she waited, she watched, and when the moment was right, she reached into his mind and turned it inside out. The curse of madness took hold without warning. In those dark moments, Hercules saw enemies where there were none. When the fog lifted, he stood in the wreckage of his own home, surrounded by the bodies of his wife and children. He had murdered his own family and remembered none of it. He sat among the ruins of everything he loved, a man who had never lost a battle, destroyed by a war he never knew he was fighting. Consumed by grief too immense for words, Hercules sought out the oracle of Delphi. The oracle's answer was as brutal as the crime itself. Atonement would not come through prayer or sacrifice. It would come through suffering. He was to place himself in the service of his cousin, King Eurystheus of Tiryns, a small, cowardly man who happened to be a favorite of Hera's. The goddess had found a new way to torment Hercules, not with madness this time, but with humiliation. Eurystheus devised 10 tasks so dangerous, so deliberately impossible, that he expected Hercules to die completing them. Instead, he handed the greatest hero in Greek history the stage for the most legendary series of feats the ancient world had ever witnessed. These became known as the 12 Labors of Hercules. Labor 1, the Nemean lion. The first labor was to slay the Nemean lion, a beast that had been terrorizing the region for years. Its golden hide was impossible to pierce. No blade, no arrow, nothing worked. So Hercules did the only thing left. He used his hands. He cornered the lion, locked his arms around its throat, and strangled it to death. Even skinning it required a solution. He used the lion's own claws. When he returned wearing its hide, Eurystheus was so terrified he hid inside a giant jar. From that moment on, he refused to face Hercules directly.
Labor 2, the Lernaean Hydra. The second labor took Hercules into a swamp outside the city of Lerna, where the Hydra lived, a massive serpent with multiple heads and breath so venomous it could kill a man who simply inhaled it. Hercules attacked, but quickly discovered the Hydra's horrifying ability. Cut off one head, and 2 more grew back in its place. For every step forward, he was losing ground. The battle was becoming unwinnable. Until his nephew, Iolaus, had an idea. Each time Hercules severed a head, Iolaus rushed in with a torch and burned the stump before the heads could regenerate. They worked in brutal, coordinated rhythm, until the Hydra finally fell. The creature's remains were later immortalized in the stars as the Hydra constellation. Labor 3, the Ceryneian Hind. The third labor required a completely different approach, not destruction, but patience. The Ceryneian hind was a female deer sacred to Artemis, goddess of the hunt. So fast it could outrun an arrow in flight. Hercules couldn't kill it. He couldn't even wound it. He had to take it alive without drawing a drop of blood. He tracked the animal for an entire year across mountains and rivers, finally cornering it in the frozen northern lands of Hyperborea. When Eurystheus demanded to keep it, Hercules agreed. But the moment he released the animal, it bolted straight back to Artemis. He completed the labor without breaking his oath. That was the kind of intelligence people forgot Hercules had. Labor 4. The Erymanthian Boar. The fourth labor was the capture of the Erymanthian boar, a massive beast destroying farmland and terrorizing villages across the region. The centaur Chiron advised Hercules to drive it into deep snow, where its size became a disadvantage. Hercules did exactly that, subdued the exhausted animal, and delivered it to Tiryns, where Eurystheus, predictably, dove back into his jar. Labor 5. The Augean Stables. The fifth labor was the strangest yet. No monster, no hunt. Just the single most disgusting job in Greece. King Augeas owned hundreds of divine cattle, and their stables had not been cleaned in 30 years. The filth was legendary. Augeas was so confident the task was impossible that he agreed to pay Hercules 1/10 of his entire herd if he could clean them in a single day. Hercules didn't reach for a shovel. He studied the landscape, identified 2 nearby rivers, and dug a series of massive trenches that redirected their flow directly through the stables. The rushing water did in hours what would have taken men years. The stables were spotless by sundown. Augeas refused to pay. That refusal would cost him later. Labor 6. The Stymphalian Birds. The Stymphalian birds were carnivorous creatures, nesting in a swamp so dense no man could enter it. Hercules used a bronze rattle given to him by Athena to drive them into the open sky, then shot them down by the flock. Labor 7. The Cretan Bull. The Cretan bull, the same one connected to the birth of the Minotaur, was rampaging across Crete. Hercules approached it head-on, wrestled it into submission with a chokehold, and dragged it back to the mainland. Labor 8. The Mares of Diomedes. And King Diomedes of Thrace had built a reputation for feeding his guests to his own horses. Savage animals trained to eat human flesh. Hercules threw Diomedes into his own stables, let the horses feed, and used the calm that followed to bind their mouths and lead them away. Labor 9. Hippolyta's Belt. The 9th labor brought Hercules face to face with a different kind of power. Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, wore a belt given to her by Ares, the god of war, a symbol of her authority and strength. Hercules was sent to take it. He arrived in the Themyscira expecting a fight, but Hippolyta had heard of him and was genuinely impressed. She offered the belt without resistance. It should have been the easiest labor of all. Then Hera moved. The goddess spread a rumor through the Amazon ranks that Hercules had come to kidnap their queen. The warriors mobilized. The goodwill of moments before evaporated, and Hercules found himself fighting his way back to his ship through an army of the most skilled warriors in the ancient world. He made it out, belt in hand, but the ease of that mission had been a trap. all along. Labor 10. The Cattle of Geryon. The 10th labor sent him to the edge of the known world. Geryon was a giant, 3 heads, 3 bodies, and a herd of magical red cattle on the remote island of Erythia. Getting there was its own ordeal. Crossing the Libyan desert, Hercules was so infuriated by the heat that he drew his bow and shot an arrow directly at the sun. The sun god Helios found this so audacious that he lent Hercules his golden chariot to complete the journey. Hercules defeated Geryon's guard dog, killed his herdsman, and then killed Geryon himself before driving the cattle back across the world. That should have ended it. 10 labors completed. But Eurystheus, almost certainly at Hera's prompting, announced that 2 labors didn't count. The Hydra, because Aeolus had assisted. The stables, because Hercules had accepted payment. 2 more labors were added to the sentence. Labor 11. The golden apples. The 11th sent him after the golden apples of the Hesperides, fruit so sacred it was guarded by a serpent that never slept, tended by nymphs at the edge of the world. To find the garden, Hercules had to catch Nereus, the shape-shifting old man of the sea, and hold him through every transformation until the gods surrendered the location. At the garden, he found the Titan Atlas, condemned to hold the sky on his shoulders for eternity. Hercules struck a deal. He would take Atlas's burden while the Titan retrieved the apples. Atlas agreed, but when he returned, apples in hand, Atlas had no intention of going back under that weight. He would deliver the apples himself, he said, and leave Hercules to hold up the heavens forever. Hercules pretended to agree, but asked Atlas to take the sky back, just for a moment, while he arranged a pad for his shoulders. Atlas obliged. Hercules picked up the apples and walked away, leaving the Titan exactly where he found him. He had outthought a Titan. Labor 12. Cerberus and the underworld. The 12th and final labor went somewhere no living man was meant to go, the underworld itself. Accompanied by Hercules and Athena, Hercules descended into the realm of the dead and stood before Hades, lord of the underworld. He asked to borrow Cerberus, the 3-headed hound who guarded the gates. Hades agreed, with one condition: no weapons. Hercules grabbed all 3 heads at once, wrestled the beast into submission through sheer strength, and carried it back to the surface. When he presented Cerberus to Eurystheus, the king screamed, dove into his jar, and declared the labors finished. He never wanted to see Hercules again. After 12 years of impossible tasks, Hercules had done what no god or mortal had managed. He had atoned. Not through words or ritual, but through action. Through 12 years of blood, endurance, and ingenuity. He was eventually welcomed into Olympus and given a place among the gods. But the labors were never just about punishment. In every beast he slayed, every monster he tamed, every corner of the ancient world he brought to heel, Hercules was doing something larger. He was carving out a world where human beings could exist without being devoured by the chaos around them. He pushed back the darkness, not because a king commanded it,
but because it needed to be done. Hercules tamed the world's madness by first surviving his own. Now, which of the 12 labors do you think would have broken any other hero?